Anybody who is in the deer hunting world, or maybe even a casual deer hunter, knows the name Mitch Rompola. Mitch is a Michigan deer hunter who several years ago shot what would have been a world record whitetail, but there was some controversy around the animal, some controversy around the way Mitch handled the whole situation. Long story short, the animal is not in the books, and in many people's minds, Mitch has been disgraced. I'm one of those people, though, who believe that was a legitimate animal. I'll tell you why. I had the chance to interview Mitch Rompola many years ago, before he shot that world record buck. He took me to his house. He showed me where he hunts. He talked to me about how he hunts. As a result, I am convinced that he is the best whitetail hunter I have ever met. Mitch does not do interviews at all anymore, but he did this one with me again before the potential world record buck many years ago. But I think you can see from this, the guy knows what he's talking about.
One of the, in fact, this one here, I believe, is the one I even got a photograph of this deer a few days before I shot this deer.
Mitch Rompola is one of the best bow hunters in the country. He doesn't really like to hear that, but his record speaks for itself.
Well, at the minimums right now, I've got 18 that make the national records. I've shot well over 80. I don't even know how many bucks I've shot, really.
Mitch killed his first trophy buck back in his home state of Missouri when he was just a kid. Now his living room is filled with trophies he's taken in the years since then.
Okay, this one is the first whitetail buck I ever shot. I shot it back in 1958 in Missouri. That's where I'm originally from, and I was 1 month shy of being 10 years old. And further down the road, it ended up being a state record for Missouri. And this one here I shot in 1967, and I also shot him in Missouri, and this one ended up breaking the typical record of my other one. This buck here I shot in 1962 in Missouri, and it ended up being the state record, and it was one of the biggest ones ever taken in the world with a bow and arrow at that time. I was only 14 years old when I shot this deer. This one here is a Michigan buck. I shot this one in 1983. Typical 12 point, and I got him pretty close to the house here. This typical 10 point I shot in Michigan back in 1982. At the time I seen this deer, I thought it was going to be a new state record when we were hunting them. Okay, the one in the corner, I shot that in 1985, and that is the Michigan state record with a bow. And at the time I shot that deer, it was the second biggest typical ever killed in Michigan by any weapon.
That buck scored more than 183 points according to the Boone and Crockett Big Game Records. Very few typical racks can make that score.
My dream has always been able to try to get a typical whitetail that would score over 180, because very few had ever been taken in Michigan by any means, and even to ever see one in my lifetime, I never dreamed I really would. And when this one broke the 180 mark, I mean, it's probably a dream come true for me.
Trophy bucks don't come easy, not even for Mitch Rompola.
Well, it's a time-consuming effort. I mean, I put my total life into studying whitetail deer. I have. I'm a fanatic on it. It's probably a lot more than maybe I should be.
Mitch studies whitetails year-round.
It's been, all I can say, it's probably been way over 20 years of really extensive research on whitetail deer and how they utilize their areas.
Mitch concentrates on hunting swamps. He says that's where you'll find the big bucks.
I covered a lot of territory at first. I mapped out over 8 square miles of these big swamps in this area. And of course, I eliminated a lot of the low percentage areas and started keying in on places where I was going to start getting these deer. It took me 6 years to do that. I went a long time without shooting a big deer.
Even now, Mitch probably spends more time scouting than hunting. He says this is a good time of year to pattern the local whitetail herd, if the weather cooperates.
If you get a real heavy snowfall, 10 inches or more, it's probably not going to be real good, reliable information, because it may cause some of the deer to yard a little bit. The perfect conditions, what I like is you get like a 2 or 3 inch snow, just enough to cover things. It doesn't snow again for several days, It's given the deer a chance to run all its routines, and anybody can go out and backtrack runways in the snow. Anybody. And that's what's great about it. Postseason scouting right now, of course, I'm not leery of even alerting deer, jumping deer, and I'm not going to track deer to where they go. I want to track them to where they've been. That tells me more about that. If you're tracking deer after you jump them, you're tracking, a scared deer. What I would be looking for is, what I look for is, I try to find old buck rubs, from this season, of course. And this is a rub I found actually just the first couple days of December. The size of it, this isn't a real good indication. There's maybe a limb or two broken off. It's hard to say what type of a rack this thing might have had. The bigger the rub, the bigger the rack, they normally say, but I've seen some small 6-points rub on some pretty big trees, so it's not a real great indication. Like I said, even with the state record one, he had a 2-foot spread, and in fact, this was probably the biggest tree I ever seen that deer rub on, is one this size. He could have taken on a tree a lot bigger, but I think they do a lot more gouging and sparring with their brow tines more than they do all the rest of their rack. Especially down by the bases, they rub with them a lot more. But so the size of the rub isn't a real good indication. Of course, if you find a rub on a 10-inch tree, it probably wasn't made by a spike horn. That's common sense.
But rubs aren't the only thing Mitch concentrates on. He also looks for beds.
What I've seen with some of the beds, like this one here, I believe is probably a doe. Usually when a deer will lay down for a while, as soon as it gets up, it wants to defecate or whatever they call it. And a doe will do it off of the edge of her bed. What I've seen with the big bucks, he'll do it right in the center. And the reason for that is that's his bed. And if he comes back to it, he doesn't want any other deer laying in it. That's a marking to other deer to stay out of his bed.
Back when Mitch started, there wasn't much known about bow hunting. He had to start from scratch. But now he says hunters can learn a lot from books and videotapes. But there's no substitute for time spent in the field.
Sometimes you'll find bedding areas and scrapes and rub lines you never knew existed. And anybody can do it. A guy just starting out, learning a new area, that's the time to really learn it. Sometimes you might have to sacrifice hunting to do it. But if you want a big buck, that's what you're going to have to do.
Mitch Rompola concentrates on those big bucks, the ones that'll make it into the record books. But he knows not all hunters can do that, and that's okay.
As far as, what you consider a trophy, to me, all deer are trophy. Anytime you take a big game animal with a bow and arrow under legal hunting conditions, that's a trophy, regardless if it has antlers or not.